the author of The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East. Dr. Walid Phares, he is a Fox News Mideast analyst, and he also advises Congress on the Mideast. Check out his work and get the book, WalidPhares.com. That's Walid, WalidPhares.com, WalidPhares.com. If I have told you to read one book, this would be the book. One book this year, read this book. Dr. Walid Phares, The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East. Welcome back to Nothing But Truth. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me today.
Yes. Dr. Phares, your criticism of the Obama administration, it's in a latest Newsmax piece. You said they were bungling the response. And I guess the question is now, have they recovered?
Well, in that interview, basically, I was asked a question if the current administration is actually, coping with confronting the situation. I don't use the term bungling, but
yes.
My criticism was for both the last 2 years of the previous administration and the current 2 years of the Obama administration, in the sense of not being prepared for it. Obviously, issuing statements when the demonstrations are already on the streets, that's going by the book, saying that the government must protect and respect the will of the people. This is an abstract notion. Of course we have to do that. But the most important thing is to make sure that the younger generations in the Middle East, and we've been talking about it for years, will have a chance to actually vote for, given a chance to have a microphone to express itself, and the most important thing, that these demonstrations should not be stolen by the most organized totalitarian forces on the ground. So we have a race, and I'm calling on the administration and on Congress to make sure that in that race, which is bringing down the authoritarians, as we saw in Egypt, in Tunisia, and now tonight in Libya, that making sure that when these authoritarian regimes are down, that we have a solid representation of the youth who have demonstrated, and not have the jihadists or the Islamists steal that demonstration and establish a more authoritarian regime later.
You have also discussed, and incidentally, just for the record, Dr. Walid Phares, and I was a victim of the headline. My apologies for using the term bungling.
No,
that was
fine.
the headline. All right, getting to it. You have been critical in work and in our interviews of looking for the moderates where there's only Islamists or Khomeinists. Is the administration still doing this?
See, when reacting to events, the administration is just going by the book, meaning whenever there is violence, they're calling for violence to stop. Whenever there are calls for bringing down authoritarian regimes, they follow the book which is America's constant foreign policy of standing with democracy. Where the failure is to do two things: identify the jihadi, totalitarian movements which are pushing in the same direction to bringing the authoritarians that they don't like, but keeping the authoritarians that they like. For example, the Iranian regime, the Syrian regime, the Sudanese regime. So we have a failure in identifying the fact that there are jihadi forces who are pushing against one type of authoritarian and keeping the other kind, which is the anti-American kind. And then on the other hand, not identifying the democracy forces. We have to do a quick work catching up, and I think the administration can still do this. They have the tools, they have the means, they would have the backing of the Congress if they reach out to the NGO, non-government organizations of youth, women, minorities in the Middle East, and empower them, as this is happening, to actually move straight to the democratic culture, even if it takes stages, and not revert back the country to worse situations, as could be the case in many of these countries that are undergoing changes.
And you have highlighted the approach of dealing with, well, how Ronald Reagan dealt with communism in the former Eastern Bloc countries. Lech Walesa highlighting, identifying, and standing with those people. And yet we still have the president making statements that are, well, lukewarm. And so you've just described what they should do, what needs to happen in this model. Is their approach the fact that you've discussed a number of different countries of what's happening, be it in Libya or the authoritarian regimes of Libya, Bahrain, Egypt, and yet the threat of the Islamists coming to power. And so what you are saying is focus on the persecuted, the people that have been persecuted, and go and identify with them specifically. And you're talking about individual leaders as well, yes?
Well, absolutely. I am, questioning, all that money that was spent over the past many years, including, of course, the last 2 years, on the democracy programs. I mean, we have huge agencies in our government that have been funded and, well funded to engage with democracy forces over the past many years. And we have huge media that we funded as well: Voice of America, Al Hurra, Sawa Radio, Radio Free Europe. All of that apparatus should have, over the past at least month, identified these democracy workers in the region, invited them, give them visibility. Where are the Lev Palesta? Where are the Vaclav Havel of these places? We see that the propaganda tools of the jihadists online and on air, on satellite, on some shows of Al Jazeera, are very active in giving strength to the Islamists who are part of these demonstrations. But who is giving strength to the democracy forces and women forces in these demonstrations? We're failing, unfortunately.
And when we look at groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, it seems they're playing chess and we're playing checkers. They have a strategy and they can play the moderate line, or at least put that out. And we can even have our Director of National Intelligence say they're a secular organization. So we're so far behind here, Dr. Phares, and it seems to be catch-up. But that would have to be a dramatic change, would it not? And would that take a national address?
It would take a national address that would say we are now changing direction. We're moving to, meet with, identify, and working with the democracy forces in these regions. We would say, what is it our vision? Because so far we don't say what is our vision. We are looking for the establishment of liberal democracies, of pluralism, the right of women, the right of minorities. I mean, that has to be done since day one. We're saying we are respecting, the will of the people, but who's expressing the will of the people? See, that's where the problem is. The Muslim Brotherhood are, the Islamists are, the Salafists, the Khomeinis. They are grabbing the microphone. They have satellite TV. They have the website. They have the funding. And they are not exceeding 25% of all demonstrators in the Middle East, while 75% have nothing. And they don't even have us supporting them and at least inviting them to come to address Congress, the European Parliament, and other. It needs a different crafting from what's happening right now.
Are you seeing, because using the Cold War model and recognizing this is about freedom, and again, the coming revolution struggle for freedom in the Middle East, now we're seeing some unrest in China. And now we can see this is not about anything but control and lack of freedom overall. Yet we do have the Islamicists and the Khomeinists and the view of the restoration of the caliphate. But it is about power and getting power. And you're saying exposing and speaking to freedom, you must do that. But a lot of people say, oh, well, you can speak to it, but that doesn't matter. What we have to do is we have to have things that are stable. Because if things are stable, even with a Islamicist regime, and I know how ridiculous this sounds, Dr. Phares, in saying it, but this is, I can only draw the conclusion that this is what they believe. Even with the likes of the Muslim Brotherhood, we can have things that are stable. That way we can deal with our oil, not have it get jacked up to $91 a barrel, and we'll be okay. We'll secure what we did in the Cold War, just like in the Cold War, using the idea of stability for liberty and that false trade. Your thoughts?
Well, if this is the case, they should say it. See, the problem is they say we are with freedom and democracy and change and civil society, yet they come and counter-argue, but, all of that is not important. Stability is more important. What we need from Washington now is to tell us exactly what is the direction. Are you for the establishment of authoritarian Islamist regimes in the region that would ensure the oil for your interests and multinational companies? Or are you for the support of civil society and let the American people choose what is the policy? You can't have it both. You can't have, say, on the one hand we want democracy, on the other hand we want the Islamists. It's one or the other. That's where the problem is.
And we didn't learn from history with President Reagan talking about the evil empire or his identification of the Solidarity Movement with the Solidarity Movement during that Christmas. Okay, Dr. Phares, how stable are things in Bahrain? How stable are things in Iran? And how stable are things in Libya?
In Libya, it's a matter of hours. Major battles are coming through. In the next 2 days, either Gaddafi will be uprooted by shifting army, or he will actually undertake a major bloodshed in the region, or Libya will be divided in two zones fighting each other in a raging civil war. But things will have to move in Libya. The status quo is impossible, and that's why we need to be very, very smart, savvy in identifying the elements that are moderate and secular in Libya and work with them as soon as possible. Otherwise, yes, Libya will shift towards another radical regime. Instead of Gaddafi, you're going to have an emir, and then nothing has really changed in that case. In terms of Bahrain, in Bahrain there are negotiations now between the regime and the opposition. The problem is, across the region, that the opposition has two components. One which is liberal democratic in the sense of pro-freedom, and the other one is Islamist jihadist. And short of being able to identify the leadership of the democracy forces, we're going to have those two pushing against the authoritarians, and our choice cannot be but with the people against the authoritarians. But guess what? We're going to have a second series of clashes, unfortunately, between the democracy forces and the jihadists when they will win.
We got to stand up for people who desire to be free. We got to be true to our values, and we have the answer in this book, The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East. Dr. Walid Phares, he is a Fox News Mideast analyst, and he advises Congress on this. Hopefully more congressmen and women will take his advice, as well as the president. They could go to his website, walidphares.com. The Coming Revolution, Struggle for Freedom in the Middle East. Dr. Walid Phares, great to talk with you again, my friend. Take care.
Thank you very much.